My sister's lies and the consequences. She chose a guy over family, ruined trust, and rescheduled her wedding against our parents' wishes. Now, aita left wondering, is she trying to rebuild or just playing the victim? My sister, age 27, has caused a rift in our family over a man, age 30. I'm beginning to feel emotional, so before I completely lose my composure and derail this story, shall I list the details? Before and after Amy sent the email, she was concerned about how angry our parents would be regarding her choice of Adam, despite knowing they disliked him. I told her that even if she had chosen our parents' ideal guy, they would still be this upset because she deceived them and essentially lived a double life for 5 years. I also pointed out that if they were genuinely controlling, she would not have been able to live out of state in apartments they helped her pay for, and that she assisted in selecting, nor would she have been able to maintain a secret boyfriend for 5 years. I declared myself neutral. While I would not favor one side over the other, I would be truthful. My parents and Amy met in neutral, public locations to resolve their issues. My father had previously assisted my sister with her taxes, and it was through that tax service that we discovered she had purchased a house for herself, and Adam using the money our parents had set aside for emergencies only. Amy insisted she had no knowledge that the funds were designated for emergencies only, even though both of us had been informed by our father since childhood about the account, its purpose, the source of the money, and so forth. During their in-person meeting, Amy began by discussing her health issues, which our parents were already aware of and had previously helped her with. She mentioned her research, indicating that gut health could be linked to mental health, and that was part of why she felt the way she did, blocking them out and asserting that it was her choice to break free from their control. Well, I can use Google to reference the Mayo Clinic too. While it is theorized that gut health may relate to anxiety and depression, further tests are needed. One cannot both claim to be unstable and also say, "This is my choice because I am an adult, and you cannot control me." I cannot recall if this was during that same meeting or another one, but my father asked Amy to evaluate how much of their relationship was good versus bad. After some consideration, she replied, 80 good family times and 20 bad. My father pointed out that with so much good, she was fixating solely on the negatives and should take a more comprehensive view of their relationship. They reviewed the timeline of the past 5 years and discussed some of the lies my sister told them. They also went over the timeline they had with me, and I provided the context I felt was missing. However, they did not address with me the lies my sister eventually confessed to. The car Amy was driving remained under our parents' name. That meeting did not go well, and my father stated that if she wanted to keep the car, she would have to pay him the full price for it. She has been late with her payments to him recently. I suggested family counseling since all three expressed a desire to work through this troubling revelation and build a new relationship. I also believed their meetings were gradually deteriorating without a professional mediator. My sister verbally agreed with our parents to postpone the wedding until they resolved their issues in therapy. After this agreement, Amy contacted me via text and phone call, claiming they were trying to control her again and doing so because they disliked Adam. I clarified that they were attending therapy to repair their parent-child relationship and could not consider Adam given his persistent stoicism, my sister's comments, and the fact he never sought our parents' blessing when contemplating furthering their relationship until they addressed 5 years of lies. I emphasized that if Amy wanted both our parents and Adam present at the wedding, she needed to complete therapy to rebuild that relationship. I also reminded her that due to the numerous lies revealed, she was starting from the position of a stranger with our parents, not a daughter. They still loved her, but they had learned much about her that they never thought she was capable of, making it difficult for them to reconcile their child with the person she had become. Amy could not simply say, "I apologize for lying for 5 years," and expect our parents to forgive her and move on to the next issue. She needed to recognize that she had lost their trust entirely and, in that respect, was akin to a stranger. Therapy would be long and arduous, and she would have to respond to their questions honestly and completely if she wished to maintain a relationship with them. My parents discovered the first therapist was more of a social worker, which put them slightly out of their depth. Amy declined to meet in person, so their sessions were conducted over Zoom, which upset my parents, as they preferred discussing serious topics in person. From the beginning of the email exchanges to the very end, I asked my sister if she genuinely wanted to mend her relationship with our parents, or if she intended to use this situation to push them toward cutting her off first. This way, she could tell Adam's family and the family of the business she worked for that she did everything possible to reconcile, but her parents just could not accept her choices. Was she truly committed, or was she merely performing to present herself as the victim of an unsupportive family? She insisted she was serious about rebuilding her relationship with them every time I asked. My sister, Amy, found the second therapist. Initially, things were acceptable, but that did not last. Once a week, my parents drove 2 hours out of state for an hour of family therapy and then returned home. My sister repeatedly evaded their questions and would instead bring up past events and criticize them, which would infuriate my mother, ultimately diverting the focus of the session. My parents improved at keeping their composure, but the sessions turned into my sister deflecting from directly or entirely answering their questions about her deceit. My parents learned that not only did she use the money they provided for emergencies to buy her house, but she also paid for the mortgage herself, or at the very least, contributed significantly more than half. Despite Adam contributing virtually no money to the house, she included his name on the deed alongside hers. With persistent probing from both my father and the therapist, she consulted a lawyer to explore the possibility of removing his name. After some back and forth with her and the lawyer, along with additional urging from my parents and the therapist to reconvene and discuss potential solutions, the lawyer indicated that transfer of sole ownership to my sister would require him to voluntarily relinquish his claim through a prenuptial agreement. My father offered to clear the mortgage and purchase the house from her, which would also remove Adam's name from the deed, necessitating either rent payments from him or his eviction. However, my sister was now unable to do this if they had a serious argument, since he owned half the house. Therapy gradually evolved into a stalemate between an immovable object and an unstoppable force. With my sister somewhat withdrawing and only interacting with them in therapy sessions and via email, she attempted to re-establish phone calls during her drives home, mainly to vent. My parents, however, did not want her to revive old routines and told her to call them only after she arrived home. Those calls eventually ceased. My parents became increasingly aware of the discrepancies between what she said to them in therapy and the content of her emails. My sister was having one-on-one sessions with the family therapist, which my parents supported because they believed she was a troubled young woman undergoing a mental breakdown due to years of workplace stress, hoping that individual sessions would be beneficial. To my parents, the therapist appeared to grow somewhat biased in favor of my sister and increasingly unprofessional. On one occasion, 5 minutes before the session was scheduled to conclude, while my parents were still speaking, the therapist began packing her belongings. My parents stopped talking, thinking the therapist was prematurely wrapping up, but she urged them to continue, stating she was still listening. After a particularly challenging session one day, the therapist, in a very pointed and provocative manner according to my parents, wished them a happy holidays. To my parents, this felt insincere, especially since earlier in the session, they had made a statement that, while not directed at the therapist, she still took personally. As I mentioned previously, our parents adopted us when we were 2 weeks old, and it was a closed adoption. In both the emails my sister sent and in therapy sessions, she frequently expressed that she suffered from abandonment issues. Moreover, my parents noted that, for someone claiming to have abandonment issues, Amy was quick to abandon us. Thus, one could question whether abandonment issues is even the correct term for some of her challenges. Now, I cannot recall how or why this information surfaced. It has been quite a lot. But throughout the months of discussing lying, secrecy, and wedding planning issues that our parents were excluded from due to my sister's deceitful tendencies, the topic of Adam's family came up, as did the family that owns the business where my sister is employed. Perhaps she mentioned this to validate that her job was going well. I do not remember. In her initial email, she mentioned one positive aspect of Adam's family was that they were large, contrasting with us being just 3, meaning our mother, father, and I. My sister currently works at a family-owned business, which is fairly well known and successful. However, some things she boasted about in therapy sessions felt bizarre. I recognize much of this information is based on what my parents have conveyed to me. I made it clear to Amy that she could text or call me freely about the matter, but aside from the aftermath of that first email, she has remained largely silent. Before this, our communication was sporadic, consisting of some texts and calls with both of us taking the initiative at times. However, after April, it became almost exclusively me initiating contact. Our exchanges had dwindled to once a month, where I would send an icebreaker or pose a question, leaving her space to respond. When she did speak to me about the therapy sessions, she shared her perspective. However, whenever I inquired why she could not answer certain questions our parents posed, her responses ranged from excuses to defensiveness. This was unproductive, and while I appreciated hearing her side and providing her advice, it was difficult, especially since some of my suggestions implied she should consider their perspective, or when it became evident that I had corrected things she had told them to reflect the truth. I had informed her that I was leveling the playing field for our parents, and if she wanted to restore their relationship, she needed to be 100% honest, no more lies. She would accuse me of siding with them. I reassured her that I remained neutral and was attempting to assist both sides in rebuilding the relationship. At this point, she does not wish to discuss how therapy is progressing, and I am the one generally initiating any small talk. I later discovered from our mother and father that she had rescheduled the wedding for March 2025. She broke the verbal agreement made with them, which I have evidence of since she texted me about it, and I have a copy of that text along with the date. She sent it to our parents for their next session, effectively establishing a deadline for their therapy. She did not even inform me about this herself, and when I brought it up during a phone conversation, insisting she should honor the agreement and maintain a long engagement for now, as she would not be aiding anyone by rescheduling. It seemed as though she neither understood nor wanted to understand. She kept insisting that she rescheduled because our parents were attempting to control her again by requiring her to postpone the wedding to do family therapy with her. Additionally, she accused me of violating her privacy by sharing that one text where she informed me about the verbal agreement made with our parents. For the record, I had not shared any other texts, only that one. All this stress, tension, stubbornness, the impending March deadline, and her frankly narcissism culminated around the end of January 2025, when my parents could no longer endure it. They terminated the therapy. They still hear from her occasionally, but it is infrequent. I continue to send her icebreakers, receiving only one-word responses, and whenever I attempt to engage in serious conversations, she claims she is not ready. There is still much left unsaid, but I believe I have shared enough for now. Amy set everyone up for failure and was astonished and hurt when our parents continued to be angry and upset instead of forgiving her after she apologized. I feel disappointment and anger toward her for being a coward, for lying constantly, and for fleeing the situation because it was the simplest option. Mostly, I am angry with myself for having concealed her secret in the first place. I feel incredibly foolish for having aided Amy in igniting this issue because I genuinely did not believe this relationship was serious. Certainly not marriage. As if he were the first bland-looking white boy in a line of similar-seeming boys making promises of marriage. I feel incredibly naive for realizing who my sister truly is, recognizing that she is a liar, and still having the arrogance to think she would not lie to me simply because she revealed some truths. I genuinely do not know anymore how much of what she says to believe. I am maintaining low contact with her, and yes, I am the one starting all the conversations. I am certain I would hear every possible excuse if I pressed her, but I am unsure if I want to. Everything about this is terrible. My mother still cries often and has only recently found the courage to confide in her friends about all this. She hesitated to do so before, feeling embarrassed, even though it is Amy who should feel ashamed. My emotional well has run dry, and my energy reserves are depleted. I am trying to extricate myself from the pit I dug my life into while simultaneously comforting and supporting my aging parents, who are grieving a daughter they lost, but is still alive, and dealing with a little sister whose head is so far up her own concerns that she spews nonsense whenever she speaks. Nothing seems to be working lately, and I long to retreat into my own thoughts and sleep indefinitely. For months, I contemplated sharing all of this, but I remain uncertain. If I keep claiming I am fine, I hope that one day I will be, but this is genuinely distressing. I know it is Amy who caused this and made these choices, yet I feel complicit due to my own mistakes and neglecting to acknowledge that she is not only a liar, but also obsessed with boys. Despite their ages, I do not think I have ever seen her date a man.